The chamber of the Imperial Council was a monument to arrogance, a vast dome of crystalline glass that reflected the dying light of a red star, with thrones carved from meteor iron and banners woven from the silk of creatures no human had ever named. Every surface seemed designed to remind visitors that this empire was eternal, unshakable, immune to the small tragedies of lesser species. When the doors opened, the murmurs of 100 alien dignitaries fell to silence, for through them walked a solitary human woman with nothing but a small leather satchel, a battered porcelain teacup, and a creature at her heel that seemed insultingly insignificant in so august a place. She moved with unhurried calm, her boots clicking against the polished obsidian floor, and for a moment the chamber studied her as though expecting her to bow. She did not. She simply walked to the center, set down her satchel with the care of a librarian shelving a book, and poured herself a cup of tea as though she had been invited to a kitchen table rather than a council of rulers. The creature beside her, a squat, muscular thing with black and white fur and eyes like wet coals, snorted and scraped the floor. "This is your advocate," sneered a voice from the upper tiers, belonging to an alien whose long neck coiled like a serpent's. "This is humanity's champion? A farmer with a rodent." The woman raised her eyes, calm as still water. She had a face not of youth, but of a life etched in lines and quiet endurance. "My name," she said softly, "is not important. But some of you whisper it. Baba Yaga. It is old. It is Russian. You may use it if you wish." The council chuckled, a low, rolling sound of amusement. "A myth," another delegate muttered. "A ghost story your kind tells itself." She sipped her tea, unbothered. "Ghost stories have teeth," she said, her voice carrying in the silence. The honey badger, Misha, though no one here yet knew its name, hissed and bared teeth far too sharp for something so small. It launched itself at the iron railing beside the floor and bit down. Sparks flared as its jaws tore through a metal strand the thickness of a soldier's wrist. The sound echoed in the chamber, sharp and ugly. The aliens shifted uneasily, and Baba Yaga smiled as though apologizing for a child's tantrum. "Don't mind him. He doesn't like cages." The chamber's presiding magistrate, a creature of silver skin and jeweled eyes, rose from its throne. "You were permitted an audience as a courtesy human. Your pets will not change the decree. The Empire has taken custody of your 3 offspring as part of our cultural refinement initiative. They will be educated, disciplined, and stripped of the primitive illusions of your species. It is a mercy. Were they older, they would have been conscripted." The teacup rattled faintly in her hands, though her expression did not shift. Only her eyes flickered, the faintest tremor of ice beneath a still lake. "You took my girls," she whispered. "They were wasting among savages. The Empire provides them future." She inhaled slowly, almost serenely, as though steadying herself against the tide of fury swelling inside. Then she set the cup carefully upon its saucer. The small act rang louder than a shout. Her voice, when it came again, was polite, too polite, like porcelain thin enough to cut. "I will have them back." The room erupted in derision. Laughter, hissing, mocking translations ricocheted through the tiers. To them she was one woman against legions. To them she was absurd. One alien, a scaled brute with mandibles wet with saliva, leaned forward and spat. "Do you think we fear a lone ape and her vermin?" She smiled, and it was gentle, grandmotherly almost. "I think you misunderstand humanity. We are not wolves, as you call yourselves. Wolves kill what they need and rest content. We are something different." She leaned forward just enough for the light to catch her eyes. "We are the thing wolves tell stories about in the dark." A hush fell, unwilling, inexplicable. Even the arrogant magistrate shifted on its throne. Somewhere in the upper tiers, an elder alien whispered in its native tongue, "Not again. Not another Terran." Misha scraped claws against the floor, leaving grooves in stone that should have been unbreakable. "You came to negotiate?" the magistrate asked, though it sounded more like an accusation. She tilted her head as though considering. "I came to give you a chance. A single chance. Return my daughters to me, and I will walk away, and this chamber will remain standing. Refuse, she gestured lightly with her hand, and for the first time the council noticed the satchel's faint hum, the way the floor vibrated with a frequency just beneath hearing. And I will stay. An alien diplomat rose, incredulous. Stay? You cannot intimidate the Empire. Do you know how many systems kneel before us? Do you know how many fleets? Her lips curled with quiet humor. Do you know how many mothers have buried their children? Do you know how many civilizations thought themselves eternal until the ground shifted beneath their feet? She shook her head, a rueful schoolteacher correcting a dull student. Numbers do not protect you. Ask Rome. Ask Carthage. Ask every empire that wrote itself into stone and still became dust. The silence afterward was thicker than smoke. Her words hung there, incomprehensible yet heavy, as if history itself had bled into the chamber. One counselor finally snapped, slamming a claw against the railing. Remove her. Guards moved, armored giants with plasma pikes, their boots clanging on the floor. Baba Yaga rose. She was not tall, not imposing, not armored. She simply stood, adjusting the sleeve of her coat as though preparing to step out into a breeze. The honey badger crouched low, lips peeled back, and when the first guard approached, Misha leapt, not at the soldier, but at his weapon. With a screech of torn circuitry, the plasma pike cracked in half. Sparks burst like fireworks, as the badger shredded it with manic fury. The soldier staggered back. Others surged forward. Baba Yaga did not even glance at them. She merely walked to the center of the chamber, tea forgotten, voice level. You mistake my courtesy for weakness. But understand this, you did not take livestock. You did not take servants. You took my blood, my children. She lifted her chin, eyes sweeping the council. And I am death in a suit with a honey badger at my heel. The guards hesitated. One tried to steady his aim, but his hand trembled. Another shifted his stance, uncertain. Fear moved through them like a rumor. The magistrate snarled. You will leave, human. This is not a threat you are allowed to make. She smiled faintly. You think I am asking? Misha snarled, foam flecking its muzzle. Baba Yaga tapped the satchel once, and the chamber's lights flickered, dimmed, and pulsed back in strange rhythm. The floor itself vibrated. She had placed something, seeds of disruption, perhaps explosives, perhaps worse. No one knew. None dared test. She let the silence deepen, savoring their unease. Then she said softly, I will have my girls back. The magistrate began to speak, but his voice faltered when she raised her eyes fully for the first time, and every counselor felt it. The depthless promise of violence, the patience of someone who could wait decades for revenge and never let the rage cool. She straightened her coat, brushed non-existent dust from a sleeve, and said as though remarking on weather, The Empire has made its choice. Now I will make mine. The chamber doors groaned shut of their own accord, locking with a metallic clang that reverberated like a death knell. Misha's eyes burned in the dim light. The satchel hummed louder, and Baba Yaga set her empty teacup down on the council floor, porcelain against stone, a sound delicate yet final. I'll be taking my girls back now. The silence that followed her words was suffocating, heavy enough to bend the air itself. No counselor dared laugh this time. The magistrate shifted upon its throne, jeweled eyes narrowing, but the confidence had dimmed, replaced by an unease that spread like a contagion across the tears. The guards, still circling Baba Yaga, glanced at one another as if awaiting a cue that would never come. Bold, the magistrate said at last, voice brittle, but empty. It gestured, a flash of its long, jewel-studded fingers. Remove her. The guards lunged. Baba Yaga didn't flinch. She folded her hands neatly before her, watching them approach as though evaluating dancers. Misha, however, exploded into motion, a streak of fur and teeth. The honey badger latched onto the first soldier's shin, armor screeching as claws dug through composite plating. The soldier screamed, staggering. The others froze in disbelief. Misha hung on with animal joy, shaking its head violently until sparks burst from servos embedded in the armor. The soldier toppled, weapon clattering across the stone. Baba Yaga's voice cut through the chaos, soft and almost apologetic. I told you he doesn't like cages. Or uniforms. Two guards attempted to flank her. She sidestepped one, a lazy shift of weight that let his momentum carry him forward into the other. Their weapons tangled, discharging in a thunderclap of plasma that scorched the ceiling. The chamber filled with the acrid stench of ionized air. Baba Yaga raised one eyebrow, unimpressed. You really should rehearse together more. Coordination is key. The humor was deliberate, calculated. Her calmness was more unnerving than violence could ever be. Every insult was delivered with the precision of a surgeon, slicing through the council's facade of superiority. A diplomat, scales flashing with agitation, hissed from the upper tiers. Barbarian. You mock order itself. Barbarian. Baba Yaga tilted her head, letting the word hang. That's charming. Do you know what barbarians do? They end empires. Always have. Another guard swung his pike. She ducked, not hurried, not frantic, just efficient, and drove her elbow into the joint of his arm. Bone cracked audibly even through armor. The weapon fell, and Misha immediately seized it, dragging it across the floor like a prize. The honey badger gnawed the haft until sparks erupted again, then tossed it aside with contempt. The counselors were no longer laughing. Some leaned back, faces pale, or their alien equivalents thereof. Others whispered frantically into comms, their words laced with doubt. You think the spectacle frightens us, the magistrate snapped, though its voice betrayed strain. A single woman and an animal against a galactic order? You insult us with this theater. Baba Yaga looked up at the thrones, her expression kind, patient. Theater is when you pretend the actors have power. This, she spread her hands, gesturing to the wreckage, to the trembling guards, to the rail Misha had already reduced to scrap, is rehearsal. Rehearsal for what? A young counselor demanded, his crest quivering. Her smile was faint but unmistakably sharp. The funeral march. The magistrate pounded the arm of its throne. Enough. We will not. Not what? She interrupted, voice still soft, but carrying. Not bow. Not yield. Not admit that you made a mistake, that you underestimated one mother and her age. She took a step forward, her boots echoing like drumbeats. You believe your fleets make you untouchable. You believe your archives prove you eternal. But you forget what you cannot measure. Patience. Grief. The fire inside someone who has already lost everything worth fearing death for. The chamber's temperature seemed to drop. Even the air recyclers hummed louder, as if unsettled. She tapped the satchel with one finger, and again the floor hummed. This time, a holographic projection sprang upward, startling the nearest guards. A map, clear, detailed, alive with pulsing signals, hovered in the chamber air. It depicted a planet circling a dim star, scarred with prisons, bunkers, and orbital fortresses. At its center, 3 glowing markers. Her daughters. Baba Yaga's voice was steady. Here. That is where you keep them. In a facility meant to break the will of soldiers, not children. You called it education. I call it theft. The council erupted into cries. How does she? That's classified. Sabotage. She silenced them with one raised palm. You wonder how I know. It's simple. Humanity watches. We listen when you think we are deaf. We smile when you think we are broken. You've mistaken silence for surrender. Misha growled, circling her ankles, its eyes glowing faintly from some reflection off the hologram. The magistrate tried to recover, claws gripping the throne's armrests. Even if you know the location, you cannot breach it. An entire legion stands guard. Entire fleets patrol its skies. Of course, Baba Yaga murmured. Empires always trust their walls. Her gaze flicked up, and for a moment the mask of politeness thinned. What looked out through her eyes was something older, sharper, stripped of mercy. But you have no walls against me. The guards who had survived the first skirmish edged back unconsciously. One dropped his pike and pretended it was an accident. Another muttered a prayer. You don't frighten us, the magistrate insisted, but the words were hollow, brittle as glass. I don't need to frighten you. She took a step closer to the projection, her fingers brushing its light as if caressing her daughter's faces. Her voice was low, intimate, yet it carried to the farthest tears. I only need to remind you what happens when you steal from a human mother. We will walk barefoot into fire. We will bleed the oceans dry. We will wait centuries if we must. And when we come, we will not come alone. The last word struck deeper than any weapon. Not alone. The implication was vast, terrifying. Your fleets, she continued. Do you think we haven't counted them? Your supply lines? Do you think we haven't traced them? Your treaties. Her smile was razor thin. Do you think we signed them in good faith? Counselors whispered frantically, realizing too late what she meant. The trap was already set. The magistrate hissed. You threatened the balance of the galaxy. No, she said. You did when you touched my girls. Misha leapt onto the hologram pedestal, scattering sparks, snarling at the projection as if it too were an enemy. The sight was absurd and terrible, and none dared laugh. A diplomat trembled, his voice breaking. You mean to start a war? She looked up at him with that same quiet patience, the patience of someone who had long since accepted the cost. You already started it. I am simply here to end it. Another voice, quavering, whispered what others feared to say aloud. Baba Yaga inclined her head politely. Correct. For the first time, even the magistrate faltered. Jewel eyes darted nervously, unsure where to look. Remove her, it commanded again, but this time no guard moved. They stood frozen, unwilling to step closer. The courage to face this woman and her impossible pet had dissolved. Her tea sat cooling on the floor where she had left it, a ring of condensation forming around the cup. She picked it up now, savoring a sip. Her calmness was more damning than any rage. This could have been so simple, she said, voice almost wistful. You give me back my daughters. I give you peace. But peace was never in your nature, was it? You mistake it for weakness. And so you will learn the hard way. The hologram shifted suddenly, showing not just a prison planet, but a spread of surrounding sectors. Symbols marked supply depots, refueling stations, shipyards. All vulnerable. All already mapped. Humanity doesn't need fleets to fight you, she murmured. We only need time. Time to watch. Time to wait. Time to choose the moment. And now, she closed the satchel with a soft click, cutting off the projection. The moment has come. The magistrate's voice broke despite itself. You cannot mean to face an entire legion alone. Her answer was as soft as breath. Watch me. The lights flickered again, plunging the chamber into momentary shadow. When they came back, Baba Yaga was gone from the center, vanished into the dim edges, leaving only her teacup on the floor. Misha's growl echoed from the darkness, a predator circling unseen. Counselors shouted, calling guards, demanding light. But her voice cut through, disembodied yet calm. You will see me again, in your prisons, in your fortresses. And when you do, you will remember this moment and wonder why you did not listen. The magistrate shouted orders, but they sounded desperate, panicked. And then, faint, almost tender, her voice one last time. Mama's coming, girls. The chamber froze. Those words, fragile and human, were more terrifying than all her threats. The satchel's hum built to a sharp crescendo, shaking the council floor. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The counselors screamed. And then, with a sound like a gunshot, the hologram reignited one last time, not the prison planet now, but a single symbol blazing across the galaxy's map, the mark of Earth. The mark pulsed, alive, defiant. Snow did not fall on the prison world, but the storms that whipped across its blackened plains carried the same silence, the same blindness. Wind howled through the scorched ridges, rattling steel spires and shivering electrified fences that stretched like the ribs of some ancient skeleton. Floodlights cut wide arcs across the compound, piercing the darkness, searching for ghosts. Inside, behind bars too heavy for even soldiers to lift, 3 small figures huddled together in their cots, whispering promises that their mother would come. The older one told the younger 2 to be brave, though her own voice cracked with fear. Far above, hidden in the thin, poisonous clouds, a shuttle no larger than a farmhouse guttered its engines, and sank like a predator lowering itself into tall grass. Baba Yaga sat at its helm, face calm, movements measured, the way one moves when every step is part of a plan rehearsed 1,000 times. Beside her, Misha paced, claws scraping metal, breath fogging in the cold interior. The badger's nose twitched violently, sensing violence near, as though tasting it in the very air. She cut the engines. Silence swallowed them. For a moment she sat in the dark, her reflection faint in the cracked viewport. The mask of serenity trembled. She let herself feel it, the ache of weeks without her girls, the terror of what hands might have touched them, what words might have scarred them. Her lips moved in a prayer so old it predated spaceflight. Then, like a shutter slamming, the softness vanished. Death looked out through her eyes again. The shuttle dropped. A controlled descent, too fast for radar to trace, too erratic for scanners to track. Alarms wailed across the compound. Sirens pierced the storm. Soldiers scrambled, spotlights wheeling upward. But too late. The shuttle slammed into the mud just beyond the perimeter wall, shattering its hull into fragments. Fire bloomed. Smoke curled into the night. The garrison commander bellowed orders, sending squads rushing to encircle the wreck. They found nothing but fire. Beneath the burning carcass, Baba Yaga crawled through a maintenance hatch she had cut hours before with a stolen plasma torch. Misha wriggled after her, mud clinging to its fur, eyes glowing faintly red in the haze. Together they slid into the drainage trench that ran beneath the wall. The trench stank of chemicals and rot. Rats skittered. Misha snapped one in its jaws without slowing. She crawled forward, breath steady, palms slick against rusting grates. Every sound above, boots pounding, rifles cocking. She counted, catalogued. Every mistake the soldiers made became a stitch in the tapestry she was weaving. When she emerged at the inner yard, a squad of 6 marched past, shouting to one another. She let them pass, then rose silently from the muck. A knife flashed once, twice. 2 fell without a sound. Misha leapt on a third, shredding his throat through armor. The rest turned, firing blind into shadows, their own panic killing them more efficiently than her blade. In less than a minute, the yard was silent again. She dragged the bodies into the shadows, not out of mercy, but necessity. She was a ghost, and ghosts left no trace. Inside the compound, the prison pulsed with life. Drones buzzed along corridors, cameras tracked every corner, biometric locks sealed every door. Baba Yaga moved through it like smoke, leaving no alarm tripped for longer than a breath. A lens flickered, then went black under the edge of her knife. A guard turned to find his console dead, then slumped with a neat hole through his eye. Misha tore through a conduit, sparks showering, plunging a hallway into darkness. In that darkness, men died, and yet she smiled as she walked. A faint, incongruous smile, as though enjoying a stroll through a market. When a soldier caught her in his beam and demanded she halt, she asked him how he liked his rations, if the stew was still too salty. When he hesitated, unnerved, she shot him between words, his confusion frozen on his face. Her humor was not meant for herself. It was meant to erode, to disorient, to remind them that this was not war, it was theater, and she was both actress and playwright. At last she reached the central core. Beyond its gates, through reinforced walls, her daughters slept fitfully under guard. She paused there, resting a hand against cold steel. For the first time, her breath hitched. She whispered their names like talismans. Misha pressed its body against her leg, low growl vibrating through them both. The gate required 3 levels of clearance. She had none. She pulled from her satchel a device that looked like little more than a battered thermos wrapped in wires. With a twist, it hummed. A pulse rippled outward, silent but visible, distorting the air. The gate groaned. Metal warped. The lock screamed before snapping like bones. She exhaled. But the pulse did more. Lights across the compound flared, then dimmed. Alarms shrieked. The element of silence was gone. Boots thundered. Dozens, then hundreds. The corridor filled with the sound of an army converging. She turned to face the darkness, fingers flexing, body loose, ready. Misha crouched low, lips peeled back. The first wave came. Heavy infantry, armored in exosuits, rifles glowing hot. Plasma bolts scorched the walls. She rolled into the smoke, firing in silence, every shot a death. Grenades boomed, but she had already slipped behind them. Misha hurled itself into a soldier's chest, claws tearing through hydraulics, until the suit collapsed inward like a coffin. She moved through it all like a dancer, each step precise, each breath measured. And still she smiled. "Is this all?" she called, voice cutting through gunfire. "This is the legion I was warned about? This is the storm meant to keep me from my girls?" She laughed, low and dangerous. "I have seen worse at school board meetings." The alien soldiers faltered. Not long, but long enough. She seized at hesitation, carving through them, weapon turning into extension of will. Her coat whipped around her hair plastered to her face, her eyes bright with something almost holy in its fury. Still they came, wave after wave. The floor was slick with blood not her own. She felt it under her boots, thick, slowing her. Sweat stung her eyes. A bolt grazed her ribs, burning flesh. She staggered, nearly dropped. For one breath, doubt clawed her throat. Then she heard it. Small voices, muffled by stone, but clear in her memory. "Mama's coming." She surged. With a cry raw enough to shake steel, she drove forward, through fire, through blades. Misha screamed with her, a sound like hell's own hound. Together, they broke the wave. She hurled a final knife into the last guard's throat, then stumbled against the cell door. Her daughters were there. 3 pairs of wide eyes, glistening with terror and hope, pressed to the bars. "Mama," they cried. Her knees nearly gave, but she pressed her hand to the glass, fingers against theirs. "I'm here," she whispered, voice breaking for the first time. "I told you. Always." Behind her, the alarms reached a crescendo. Reinforcements. An entire legion pouring in. Shadows stretched down the corridor, weapons glinting. She could not break them and free the girls at once. Her daughters' tears streaked their faces. "Don't leave us." Her heart cracked. She turned, blood dripping from her coat, eyes burning with impossible resolve. She raised her weapon, straightened her spine, and whispered to them, without looking back, "Close your eyes, my loves." The corridor roared with marching feet, the metallic scream of armored giants readying for war. She drew her last blade, its edge black with enemy blood, and set her stance before the flood. Misha crouched at her heel, growling low, its body coiled like a spring. The first shapes emerged from the smoke. A commander in gilded armor raised his hand, signaling the charge. Rows upon rows of soldiers leveled their rifles. The air thickened with ozone and death. Baba Yaga's breath slowed. She tasted iron in her mouth. Her hands were steady. Her daughter's sobs pressed into her spine like wings. She looked at the army before her, then down at the snarling beast beside her. "Now," she whispered. Misha leapt, a streak of teeth and fury. She followed, blade flashing, heart beating not with fear, but with certainty. And just as the tide was about to crash over them, the walls shook, not from soldiers, but from something deeper, larger, older. The ceiling split with a thunderous crack, dust raining. Lights flickered. From far above, a sound rolled like a drumbeat across the heavens, the unmistakable roar of engines. Not alien engines. Human. The roar above was unmistakable, a thunder not of nature, but of engines forged in defiance. Every soldier in the corridor faltered, rifles wavering as the sound rolled through steel and bone. Baba Yaga did not falter. She lifted her chin, lips curling into something between a smile and a snarl. Humanity had come. Not an army of myth, not a fleet of boast, but something worse, a promise kept. The commander in gilded armor bellowed for his soldiers to fire. Plasma bolts screamed, scorching the walls, slicing through shadows. Baba Yaga surged forward, knife flashing, body low and fast. She cut through the first rank before they knew how close she'd come. Blood sprayed across her coat, hot and bright, but she moved with terrifying calm. Misha burst from beneath her legs like a missile, jaws clamping onto the commander's ankle. dragging him down with a sound like tearing steel. Screams rang out, drowned by the beast's guttural growl. Above, the prison trembled again. Lights guttered. Dust cascaded. Somewhere far off, an explosion rattled the bones of the facility. Humanity's fleet had struck, their engines singing hymns of vengeance. Sirens shrieked across the planet. Orders tangled over comms, voices rising in panic. This was no isolated breach. It was the beginning of collapse. Baba Yaga pressed forward through the chaos, carving a path toward her daughter's cell. She fought not with rage, but with absolute precision, every movement conserving strength, every breath measured. Soldiers tried to flank her. She pivoted, slammed a blade into one's visor, kicked another into Misha's path. The honey badger tore through armor as if it were tissue, ignoring plasma bolts that burned its fur. Soldiers stumbled back, muttering prayers in tongues alien and broken. She reached the gate again, hand trembling as it rested against the barrier. Her daughters pressed close, eyes wide and wet. She whispered to them, though her lungs burned. Almost. Just a breath longer. Then the floor split. A shell from above punched through the roof, tearing stone and steel, igniting half the corridor. Soldiers flew like rag dolls. Smoke swallowed everything. Through it, a shape descended, black armor, a helm painted with a grin that did not belong to any alien. A human marine, shoulders broad, rifle steady. Behind him, more shadows fell, armored figures with the quiet, disciplined movements of soldiers who had drilled for this very war. Extraction, the marine barked, voice metallic through his helm. Priority, the girls. For the first time in weeks, Baba Yaga allowed herself to exhale. Reinforcements had come not because she begged, but because humanity had waited for its signal. She wiped blood from her face and nodded once. Cover me. The Marines spread, rifles unleashing a storm of fire, so precise it looked like choreography. Aliens dropped by the dozen, their counterfire meaningless against shields that shimmered like blue glass. Misha darted through the chaos, finishing what bolts had begun, leaving only ruin in its wake. Baba Yaga pulled another device from her satchel, a small cube humming with power. She pressed it to the cell's lock. With a hiss and a shriek, the barrier dissolved. The door swung open. Her daughters tumbled into her arms, sobbing, clinging, burying their faces in her blood-stained coat. She dropped to her knees, holding them so tight it seemed she might never let go. For a heartbeat, the war outside vanished, and there was only the warmth of their hair against her cheek, the fragile rhythm of their breath against her chest. But the moment was short. The Marines shouted, pulling her back. Legions regrouping. We need to exfil, now. She rose, daughters clinging to her hands, eyes blazing once more. We don't run, she said coldly. We finish it. The Marine hesitated. Orders are clear. My orders, she replied, voice like steel wrapped in silk. You came because I lit the match. You'll leave when the fire consumes them. Her daughters looked up at her. Fear mingled with awe. She squeezed their hands gently, whispering for them alone. You are safe. That is all that matters. Everything else is just housekeeping. She turned back to the corridor, where alien soldiers rallied again, their commander dragging himself upright, armor sparking, face twisted with hatred. He spat a curse in his language, then in halting Terran. You cannot destroy the Empire. It is eternal. Baba Yaga stepped forward, daughters behind her, Misha growling at her heel. Her coat smoked from burns, her hands were slick with blood, but her voice was clear as church bells. Eternal is a word the dead like to whisper. Carthage said it. Rome said it. Every throne built on arrogance said it. And now you say it. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Do you know what happened to them? The commander opened his mouth, but no sound came. They became dust, she said. Then she lifted her knife, gleaming red, and charged. The Marines surged with her, a tide of humanity unleashed. Rifles sang, blades flashed, grenades thundered. The corridor became a slaughterhouse, smoke and fire painting the walls. Baba Yaga fought at the front, a mother made into a storm, her fury wrapped in frightening control. Misha tore through kneecaps and throats, fearless, relentless. The commander met her in the middle, blade against blade. He was taller, stronger, armored like a fortress. She was faster, quieter, colder. He swung with rage. She slipped beneath it, stabbing low, twisting. His roar shook the chamber, but she did not flinch. She rose, carving upward, slicing through joints until the giant collapsed. She leaned close as he fell, her whisper colder than space. Eternal ends tonight. He died with her, eyes the last thing he saw. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of burning wires. The Marines stood among corpses, rifles cooling. Baba Yaga straightened, chest heaving, knife dripping. Her daughters clung to her legs, eyes wide not with fear but fierce, unbreakable pride. Humanity's anthem thundered faintly from comms, a reminder that across the stars, fleets were striking, strongholds burning. This prison was not an isolated rescue. It was the opening note of a requiem. One Marine approached, visor lifting to reveal tired eyes. "Ma'am." Orders came through. "Full offensive is underway. Earth wants you to exfil for debrief." She looked at him as though he were a child. "Earth does not give me orders." He hesitated, then nodded, almost relieved. She turned to her daughters, kneeling to their height. "Look at me," she whispered. "Do you see what they tried to take from us? Do you see what we took back?" The eldest nodded, tears streaming. The youngest reached up to touch her mother's cheek. "Mama," she said, voice trembling but sure. The word broke her. For a heartbeat, Baba Yaga closed her eyes, pulling them all into an embrace that was both shield and sanctuary. But war raged beyond these walls. She rose again, wiping her face, her voice cool, and even once more. This was not rescue. This was warning. The Marines shifted uneasily. Warning to who? She looked to the ceiling, to the stars burning beyond it, and her voice carried like prophecy. To everyone who thinks humanity fears war, we do not fear it. We refine it. We study it. We wait, patient, polite, until someone dares take what is ours. And then she glanced down at Misha, whose muzzle dripped blood, eyes glinting with savage delight. Then the galaxy learns what happens when you laugh at the honey badger. A distant explosion rocked the compound. The walls cracked. Floodlights outside died. Humanity's fleet had breached the skies. Baba Yaga took her daughter's hands, stepping over bodies, her voice soft but unshakable. "We go home now. Let the Empire find out what it means to make mothers into monsters." As they walked, the roof above split wide, fire raining down. A transport descended, ramp lowering. Marines signaled them forward. Her daughters stumbled toward the light, but Baba Yaga lingered, turning once more to the carnage behind her. "Remember this night," she said to no one and everyone, her whisper carried by fire and smoke. "The night your empire began to die." She climbed the ramp. Misha followed, leaving bloody paw prints on steel. The transport rose, the prison shrinking below, swallowed by fire. Her daughters clung to her, trembling but alive. She held them tight, gaze fixed not on the ruin beneath, but on the stars ahead. And when the stars cleared, what awaited was not peace, but the black silhouettes of hundreds of human ships, their hulls painted with the mark of Earth, their weapons glowing like a constellation of fury. The fleet stretched across the void, endless, patient, smiling. Her daughters gasped. Even Baba Yaga's lips curved faintly. The comms crackled with a voice that echoed across the stars. "Operation Matryoshka is live." Her eyes burned with fire, her whisper colder than ice. "So it begins.